a podcast about product management, user experience design, technology, and more. This is Product by Design. All right, welcome to another episode of Product by Design with Kyle and Eva. Eva is back. Welcome back for
Thank you.
This episode.
I am back. Well, I feel like I am back also from hell because I went on a trip and then at the beginning of November, and I came back and on literally on the way back on the airplane, I was like, a little bit of sore throat, a little bit of headache. And then the second I got home, I was like, oh, here we go. I'm officially not feeling well. And then I got, what is this called? The doctor said there has been this very crazy viral upper respiratory infection going around, not COVID.
Okay.
So remember, besides COVID, we still have other diseases going on and illnesses.
There's other stuff.
Yeah. And kind of forgot about it, right? Because everyone's like COVID. And then when that got in my system, I was like, oh, good reminder. And anyways, so I was down, literally horizontal on my couch for 4 days. And then I'm completely fine now, but I have a cough that you will hear throughout this episode. And I'm going to try to mute myself, but apologies in advance. So yeah, I am back, back from the grave. It feels like
that's good. Terrible. Yeah. Good that you got better, and maybe good it wasn't COVID. I don't know. I had to go get a COVID test too, because I got sick a little while ago and was like, this feels like COVID for sure. Went and did the test, which thankfully is not the nasal test. And it was the saliva version of the test, which was, I wasn't expecting that, was way better, but it wasn't COVID. It's just a cold.
Congrats.
Yeah. So
I did both during that week. I was like, please take a little bit of my brain.
It sounds absolutely terrible. I never had to do the nasal test version, but thankfully, the spit in the little tube and get that tested. That's pretty good.
To be honest, I didn't feel like it was that bad when they stuck that up my nose. It was okay, uncomfortable, but I've heard way worse, Yeah. Like I didn't feel like it was reaching anything too deep.
Sure.
So thank goodness.
That's good. It sounds terrible. I don't want to swab going up into the far reaches of my nasal cavity. It sounds terrible.
Your brain's leaking. Yep. But yeah, and you were telling me that you went to Disney World.
We went to Disney World.
How was
mid-November. Awesome. So, it was totally great. They've got like Christmas parades and everything starting to come back to normal a little bit. I think, they took away a lot of the characters and a lot of the parades and stuff, but they've been adding them back in slowly. So saw some parades and, character photos and character dining. Yeah. We did everything at Disney World. We'd never been, took the kids and we shut that place down. Like we were there at the beginning. We stayed until late and it was good. Kids enjoyed it. Wife enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I mean, some nights we were there until like 1:30 in the morning, like they have a Christmas party. What? Yeah. Insane.
What time do they close?
They close the park at 8, but then on certain nights they have a Christmas party that goes from like 7 to 1 in the morning. And so, it's just wild. But yeah, we were there. We weren't intending to stay that late, but we just were riding rides and watching fireworks and parade and all that stuff. And by the end of it, our kids were like asleep and slightly incoherent. Like when they would wake up and just, be like shrieking at what are we still doing here? And what's going on? But otherwise, it was a ball.
That's that is not what I expect.
Yeah.
7 to 1:30, you said?
We didn't get back
1 o'clock?
We didn't get back. I think it was 1 o'clock that it closed.
Oh my goodness.
I'm pretty sure it's like 1. Yeah.
Dang.
And they do like a fireworks show right at the end and stuff. So you're staying and watching fireworks at like 12:30 in the morning. And it was wild. And then getting a Lyft or an Uber at 1 in the morning or 1:30 in the morning is far more difficult. So there just are not that many drivers out at 1:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think they opened that late to kind of help like groups with just adults to avoid, families and children?
Maybe. I don't know. That's a good question, but there were a ton of kids there, just even younger than ours.
Right.
Yeah. Going strong.
That's insane.
I think they do it. If anything, I'd say they do it to make more money, and it's the Disney way. They sell tickets to it. So you have to buy like a separate, it's not like included in your day ticket.
See.
Yeah. So that is probably the sole reason that they do it, is to just make more money.
That seems such a long night.
Oh yeah. Super long, but it was super fun.
Yeah. I have never been to Disney World, but now I'm interested.
Yeah. You definitely check it out, but we're actually going to be doing a different podcast on a totally different podcast than this one, talking about Disney and all things. So you'll have to check that one out. And it is not a trip for like, hey, we're just going to book it and go type of thing. Like it is an active planning trip. Like you can't,
I've heard.
Yeah. If you're going to do Disney, like you have to just prepare yourself to make a ton of reservations and like do a whole bunch of planning. And like, we were part of multiple groups and all this sort of stuff, like Disney tips and here's how to navigate it and here's what you got to do and don't do and all that sort of stuff. It's insane. My wife did most of it. I can't take very much credit for any of it, but like the amount of planning that goes into it is just crazy.
Yeah, that's not my kind of vacation. So I'm like, maybe I don't want to go to Disney World. It sounds really fun, but every time when someone comes back, that's the exact same comment that they tell me. You have to plan by the hour, by the minutes, what you need to do. I'm like, I don't know if I want that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say you like have to plan it down to like the minute or anything, but you do have to have a really good idea of what you want to do and that sort of stuff, because there's all sorts of reservations that you can make that will just make it faster. And
see, this is like part of that research that you have to do. Yep. Because I wouldn't know, and I hope that I get there.
Yeah,
go to Disney World.
It's worth it.
Yeah,
it's good. Yep.
So let me ask you this: Are you ready to be back and just back to the grind from the happiest place on earth?
No, never really ready to be back to the grind, I suppose. But it helps that we did this before Thanksgiving and then Thanksgiving, and then we got Christmas coming up. So it's like the time of year that you're like, it's all good. Things are winding down for the year. We got lots of holidays and stuff. So
thank goodness. Yeah. Thank goodness. How many weeks do we have until the big week? Let's see. 3?
Yeah. Oh, and probably by the time this episode gets posted, even less.
Oh, yes. I'm so excited. And maybe this is when I need to just say out loud that this is my last episode. Don't cry. And no one's crying. Because it's been really difficult scheduling time. And I don't know, my work just has been a little intense and I have to step away. But if Kyle is happy to have me, I will periodically, maybe I'll come back and check in and do an episode, or I don't know, we'll work it out. But this is my last episode and I am happy that we're doing it kind of the end of the year so that it feels like, okay, no one's going to remember her, by the time New Year kind of starts. So that's it. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's super sad that you're going to have to step away, but I think we'll definitely have you come back periodically as you are able to and join us for just different conversations. Because for those who have been listening, you've probably noticed like Eva has been not part of all of the most recent ones. And that is because we'll blame her job for it, because she's been, and maybe sickness, I don't know, but it's been, it's been difficult, but we will continue on and we'll have Eva back periodically.
Kyle will take care of you, and who knows? I mean, the future is full of unknown. So it's been really, really fun. I'm trying to look at how many episodes we've done, and it's kind of funny because when I first started, I really was like, okay, I've heard so many of my friends that have started a podcast and they quit after 2 months or 3 weeks. And then I'm like, yep, I am going to beat them. And I have beat all of them so far. So this has been also very, how do I describe this experience? It's very enlightening. Just kind of having a separate space and time to talk about things that we like without kind of having to talk about it with the context of, your workplace or people involved. It's just kind of like the practice itself, the principle itself, So yeah, I'm really grateful. And Kyle, I'm really grateful that you asked me to do this.
It's been super fun. We're approaching almost 2 years now, which
really
is crazy to think about. Maybe, not quite 2 years, but I think it was something like March of 2020 that we started. It's like pandemic starting. We got it rolling. So,
I'm seeing the first one was April 2020. What?
Yeah.
Year and a half?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Coming up on it. So,
that's crazy.
Yep. It is crazy.
Yeah. I hope to come back, and everyone, you heard it here. Kyle is going to have me back when I can. So anyways, how do I do this segue? I haven't done it for a while. Go into our topic. Speaking of having conversations with people about what you like doing, I think this is good. Hold on. I'm almost there. Speaking of, having conversations about what you like doing and what you want to do, all that stuff and work. We're going to talk about more about our experiences on both sides of the interviewing table. So we're going to talk about, I don't know, everything and anything today. Did that work? That segue? Okay.
That works, we'll roll with it. It's a good one because
Perfect.
I think a lot of folks have been part of the great resignation or great, what are some other terms for it?
Renaissance, revival. I don't know. Yeah. No. Hold on. Revolution.
Yeah.
The French Revolution.
Working revolution.
Yes. Yeah.
As part of that have been, moving to other roles. So not just like quitting and not working, but really quitting and either finding, new roles or moving up or that sort of thing. So it's a good topic for us to touch on again, the interviewing on both sides. So like how can you go about it? How can you take advantage of all of the things in motion right now to change your job, maybe change your career? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully you're happy where you are, but if you're not, this is the time. The market is hot and get what you need. And I recently just went through a round of interviewing people, interviewing designers and researchers, and it's been really fun. So my experience today that I'm going to share mostly is going to be on the interviewing side of things. And I would say that the struggle is real, hiring someone who can fit your team while hoping that they don't get another offer, while you're in contact with them. And I have a headache just thinking about it. But but I would say even, but because of the great resignation, I also see that there's more candidates on the market, quality candidates looking for new opportunities. The ones that were not, really thinking about changing careers before have, kind of thought about maybe this is the time. And I've seen, some of my friends have done that. And so it's been really interesting, but again, it's really competitive. So that's kind of my initial thoughts.
Yeah, it is a really good time, I think, to be looking for opportunities, because there are a lot of opportunities out there, more than I think I can recall in a long time. And a lot of just change happening. And that for me is always an interesting time to be, if you are a candidate, to be in the market looking, when things are changing dramatically and when there's just tons of opportunity. So yeah. And it is, if you're hiring, it's tough. Even I think have both been on the hiring side, and there is just, with all of that opportunity for candidates, it is super difficult to not to find candidates, but to make sure
Right.
that you're compelling, like really compelling, because there's a lot of choices.
I have ran into this problem, not so much a problem. It's a perspective that I have thought about, but I would like to hear your thoughts on this, Kyle. So I can't remember where I was reading this post. It's one of those online spaces that someone asked, hey, like, what do you think about this company's interviewing process? And this person kind of talks about like, hey, they asked me to do design exercise to show them that, you know, you can provide a solution. And everyone in the comments are mostly like, don't do it. Don't, you know, provide them free solutions. That's free work. And on the other hand, you know, I kind of went down that rabbit hole because I was kind of in the middle of hiring of how can we interview people and understand their skills without, because to be honest, like I am in a startup space where there's just not a lot of structure or processing that I can rely on. So it's like the more time I put into hiring, which I want to, the less time I can answer to the 3,000 requests coming in from my team. Right. So with the limited time I had, I want to make sure that is something, you know, we say, okay, I'm confident with this process. And I didn't really quite have an answer of like, how can we skip the design exercise while still understand how the candidate themselves can, you know, fulfill the requirements. Right. And the one thing I did do is the exercise I put out was not a real problem that we have to solve as a company. It was a imaginary within, you know, same industry, but that was kind of my way to kind of get a middle ground on that. And yeah, I just want to kind of hear your thoughts on that. Just kind of some of the test project or anything like that. Do you see any of that on the product side or what's going on there?
Yeah. So I've definitely used them as well. And when we were working together, we used a design exercise for some of the candidates. And I have done that. And I think it's a good thing. I think that some companies, like I've been reading some similar comments where some companies lean on that heavy and lean on it really early. Like here's, you know, a long design exercise, or here's like something you have to do for product, and without really even talking to candidates. So just like, you know, do this work and then maybe we'll talk to you. And I think that that's totally the wrong approach. Like
interesting.
I think using them, especially for different levels. So like when it's more junior designers or product managers, I personally like to use a relatively simple exercise of some sort that is not meant to take like a significant amount of time, but to just get them thinking like, here's something that could be important. And for products, I tend to lean more on like a problem and seeing like what the writing skills are and seeing what some of the, just the thought process is. And then same with design, like it's not meant to be like a long drawn out, like you have to come up with a massive exercise, but like here's a problem, you know, do it and then come in and we're going to talk about it. So it's not meant to be like a filtering thing, but it's meant to be much more of like a collaborative thing. We want to see how you write, how you process some of these things. I also like to keep it, and I've gone back and forth on this. Like there's probably benefits of doing something like very, very pertinent to your company. But at the same time, it feels that to me has generally felt like it's too close to home, like for me to be objective on. So like, I like almost taking it out of the specific company context and picking like a problem or a product or a design that is a little bit more removed so that we can all be a little bit more objective about it. Cause I have tons, like if I was to give somebody a problem that we're facing right now, specifically, like I have tons and tons of thoughts on that, and it would be difficult. I think it'd be more difficult for me to be objective, and I would probably be harder on the candidate, like knowing all the contacts that they don't. So that's how I've used them. And I think using them to, you know, especially as you get more senior, into, you know, leadership roles and that sort of thing, like you could make it a little bit more involved, but I think it's a lot to expect early on somebody to put a ton of time into a design challenge or a product like a take home assignment. So I like using them, once we've talked, and then also, talking about it. So it's something like you bring in, let's talk through it. Let's see. So not like a filtering, like, hey, you have to do this or we're not going to talk to you type of thing, which I think is not the best use of it. And I know there are companies out there that do that. Like you gotta complete this assignment and then we'll set up an interview with you. But that to me, just, I don't know. I don't like it, but I do like some of the take home work because it helps just see the thought process.
Okay. I don't know how long I was muted because I was coughing, but I really, I think what you said is it's really interesting. Like, I really like what you said about like, don't use it as a filtering mechanism, but more to add to kind of basically how you understand the skills of this candidate.
Yep.
And I kind of forgot that I don't know why some companies just use that in the very beginning stage. Why waste everyone's time? Like,
yeah, no, I think finding a way to limit it too is super important. Like I've done it where, it's intentionally a limited thing. Like you have one page, like that's it. Like, write out something so we can see like how you solve it, how you write, how you do things, but it's not meant, it is intentionally limited so that, you can't like spend a ton of time on it. You can't like you feel like you have to go through and do like a whole bunch of extra work. It's much more like this is meant for us to talk about when we talk, and also, for you to just, put out some ideas and things that you may not have the chance to do quite in the interview context. And I think those things take home can be good, but you have to do it right.
I really like that perspective. And I don't think that this practice by itself is just purely, evil, someone trying to take your time to solve problems for free. Like, I don't think it's so much that, especially being on, the interviewing side, I really just needed more context of how well you can execute. And I think you pointed out something that is so important, is that setting some perimeters so that the candidates don't end up spending 30 hours on it. And I remember one time younger in my career, I was, let's see, how many hours was that? I mean, likely your candidates have a full-time job during that time they're interviewing. And I remember I did that while I was, doing my normal job. And I did that exercise, let's say from 6 p.m. after dinner to literally 8 a.m. the next day. I pulled an all-nighter and then went to work the next day. I don't know how I did it, but it was so tough. But I wanted to make it as good as possible. Right. And I probably didn't need to spend that much time on it. And anyways, I like what you said about setting up very specific perimeters and boundaries and make sure that no one is producing something that are just not going to be informative.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's on both sides. So like as a hiring manager or hiring team, like you need to intentionally think about that, because if you don't, you get, type A personalities who are going to, and I've done this, like, especially younger in my career, like spend a crap ton of time on, whatever it is that you're working on, because you're interested in the role, you want to really show your best work and put your best foot forward. And so you end up spending like every night for a week, working on something for hours. So, I mean, you end up spending like 20 hours on something that just, it shouldn't be like that. So like from a hiring side, being really cognizant of how can we make this beneficial for us to see what the work they can do, but without forcing them to, stretch immensely. So like really time bound or context bound things like, here's what we want. Here's what we're expecting. I mean, I've seen people who are like, oh, we leave it intentionally vague so that, we want to see how you think through. And I think in some ways, you don't want to like give the answers or be like, it has to be done like this. But at the same time, like you have to put some boundaries around it and be like, this is meant to be just one page, one slide, whatever it is, like just give us your thoughts. And, it's in addition to the conversation we'll be having and other stuff, or, there's interesting online things as well that, depending on the job or the role, that can be additive to the conversation, but also very time bound, like intentionally make it time bound. So, you don't have a young Kyle who's spending like 20 or 30 hours, like creating this thing that we're going to, you're going to look at, and, we may talk about for a minute, but is like, it didn't need to be that long. It didn't need to be that much.
It's so sad, but yeah. I think the bottom line is definitely tell your candidates exact, medium that they need to, produce their output in. Because for example, my designer, I told them, hey, we want a web-based, product that you can build. Give me wireframes, give me whatever. And I gave them the exact quantity of wireframes. Just give me 2 wireframes, nothing more. And, some more specific quantity of what they should send you and also how they should send you those things and the exact timeline, right? That line of give it to me by then, by whatever time, but be human about that timeline. Cause I don't want anyone to be
for
working,
sure.
Until 8 a.m. and then have to go to work.
A lot of the people that you'll get will be super driven and, will do that sort of thing. So, and from a candidate standpoint, like I've done a number of these, like in a whole bunch of different contexts, like answering questions or prepping presentations or all that sort of stuff. Like I wouldn't necessarily say no, because somebody's asking for something like that.
Yeah.
Especially depending on like what the context is. I would, if it was like upfront, you have to, do this deliverable, write this thing or whatever it is that people are asking for without really having a conversation or anything like that. That to me is like more of a red flag. But if it's part of what the conversation is going to be and it's, time bound and all of those things, that I wouldn't look at it and be like, I'm never going to do anything, that somebody sends just out of principle. But I would definitely be more selective on companies that are asking for that sort of thing. Just make sure that it fits into the context and it's not like a filtering thing, but it's more of a, this, we're going to be talking about it. They want to see how I'm working and that sort of stuff. So
I'm going to shine.
Yeah. Don't let it dissuade you as a candidate, but at the same time, like make sure that they are the right things and not bad or evil or that sort of thing.
Not crossing a line. Yeah. I think sometimes you kind of know and have that intuition of like, wait, this sounds wrong. And I would say push back and ask, hey, how is this going to be used? If you're, speculating they're going to use it to make a thing, right? Because at that point you are doing free work. And I personally don't agree with that. Right. And I think in this kind of space too, it's really, you can use that opportunity to show how you normally would work when the task itself is just not feasible. Yep. And to be honest, if I can hire someone that can reasonably sound the alarm and tell me, hey, I want a little more context to help me to make a better decision, that is a good thing for you to show, the hiring manager. Cause I want someone that can function just like how you show me during the interview process. Yep. And I think that context is going to make you stand out too.
It is. And remember, like as a candidate, I look back at like as a young candidate, I feel like I was just too timid in some ways. But I think what you're talking about is exactly right. Because as hiring managers, like we're people too, like we don't, like what we do isn't perfect. And a lot of times it's like a process of finding, what's the best thing. And so don't be afraid to like ask questions and be like, hey, tell me more about this. Tell me what you're trying to get. Tell me like especially if it's unclear, like if somebody's like, hey, answer these questions and send us your response, in Word or something, like, okay, feel free to like expand on that. Like, don't assume that, hey, these people, they know it. And if I ask any questions, then, it's going to be a red flag. Like, no, it's right. It could be part of the learning process for everybody of like, oh, this isn't clear what we're asking for. How can we make that more clear? Or geez, we hadn't thought that this was going to be such a big thing. We need to make it clear that it's not meant to be a massive thing, is that it's going to be part of a conversation and we don't expect more than, this amount of time spent on it or that sort of stuff. Like it's not a make or break thing. And, don't be afraid to ask those types of questions. Cause I feel like a younger me would be very timid about asking those types of questions.
Oh, for sure.
I would not now. Like I would, I would be perfectly fine, like pushing back and being like, well, what is this? What are you trying to do? why are we doing this if I didn't understand? But it can be difficult as a young candidate. You don't want to like look like you're rocking the boat, but I wouldn't worry about it. Like I keep having these episodes of advice to like your younger self, and it's things we wish we would have known. Jens and I talked about this. So go back and listen to that episode, because it was a good one on advice to our younger selves and things we wish we'd have known earlier. Because now we're not afraid to ask questions and not afraid to like push back on things. But if you're young in your career, you might be, but you shouldn't be.
This is turning into like a Oprah interview conversation, like lifestyle, how to be more assertive about, I don't know, people, work, interviews. But I agree with everything that you have said. And to be honest, it really feels like sometimes people compare their jobs to some kind of parallels of dating, but it really is a two-way street where someone is putting effort, someone has to plan the date and the other person has to participate. But if there's anything that you don't like, say something, and let's make sure this is a feasible relationship. It is, at the end of the day, this is something Kyle and I were talking about before the episode started, is that at the end of the day, like, it has to work for you and has to work for them. And it's not personal. It's a business transaction. And sometimes it's not the right fit, not the right timing, whatever the reason is. And make sure, just if you catch any of the red flags during the process, speak up and figure out what it is before you kind of say, well, that's not the right candidate, or that's not the right company. So yeah, push back and find a little more context. But sometimes you do see red flags and get out, right? I am curious though, for me, I feel like I have a more tangible output that I can ask from candidates for a designer or a researcher position. But what would that look like for product people?
One thing that I like is, and I'm a big fan of the Future press release. Like, I've used them through my career for a while now, and they're meant to be very much an opportunity to think through what you want your product to be. And this is one that I've used and I'm a fan of, like, because they're not meant to be long. They're meant to be like one page, and they are addressing, a specific either business problem or product or something like that. What does this look like in the future? And it puts you in the mindset of the customer. So who is using it? What are they saying about it? Like, how did we get from from now to the thing? It's a very Amazon thing. So they use this when they're doing new things. It's like, here's the new thing, and here's what we envision the future of it like. And so for me, that's a really good option as an exercise, because it gives you the chance to look at writing skills, empathy for like the user and the customer, that sort of thing, and then solving a problem. Like, how does this thing go about solving a specific problem? So it kind of puts all of that, it boxes it up nicely in a concise form, like, make it a page, doesn't need to be longer, and kind of hits on a couple different things. So that's one thing for me that's useful. I've done a number of things, both in the hiring side and then, the interviewing side as well. Whether it's like presentations on, specific problem, how would you go about solving this problem? Or, here's something else. So all of them are kind of around either presentation or writing, but you kind of get the opportunity to see that. And it's much better if has a good framework around it and otherwise it can get away from you. And, you could ask for a presentation on a specific business problem, but all of a sudden that becomes like solving, I've done this. It becomes like solving all of the possible problems in like a 30-page presentation on everything, and, walking through like, how do you go about this? And I don't think that was like the intention of what this was. I'm remembering one from several years ago of what this was meant to be, but man, I did it. And like, I was so sold on it too. Like, by the end, I was like, I have solved this company's problems, and it involved like new product lines and everything. Like, it was really good, like really well researched, put way too much time into it. But it was like, I was just pumped about this and ready to.
Did you get the job?
No. And that's it's a funny story. It's actually just it worked out really, really well. because this specific company, and I was for this reason that I didn't get it, but ended up having to do like massive layoffs like shortly thereafter. So they like paused the hiring and then did a whole like layoffs and stuff. So it's like, ooh, dodged a bullet with that one. But I was ready, I was ready to go out and be like, if they don't want me to do this there, I need to find either a company or like start one.
I was going to say,
because it was legit awesome. I didn't do either of those things, but
because I was going to say at that point, you just need finances and then you can start your own company.
Oh, seriously?
If you're getting into the product lines and all that. Yeah. Just come up with a business plan.
Yeah.
Just get it done. Yeah.
It was a business plan. And
that's great.
I think in another context, like putting together a business plan might be good, especially if it's a little bit more senior role. But there's like lean canvases too. Like here's a problem. Here's a lean canvas. Like just go through and fill out this sort of thing. Like how would you go about approaching this? So anyway, I think a massive presentation is too much. It was way too much at the time. Like I just, man, I remember that very vividly. I put way too much work into that. So if you can shrink that down and make it less onerous, and just, do like a lean canvas or something, that makes more sense.
How many hours did you put into that?
Oh man, so many. It's been long enough that I don't remember exactly, but it was a massive amount of work and a massive amount of research. Cause I was like, researching into the whole field and finding like, all sorts of statistics to go off of and what competition was doing and like all sorts of things. It was intense. Yeah. It was the kind of thing that you would definitely do as a product person in the role, but I should not have been doing that amount of work for an interview for sure.
Did you have to present it or did you just have to send it?
No, present
3 hours long presentation? Or
it was not as long as it could have been or probably should have been, but it was, and again, it goes back to like the expectation thing. Like how can you manage the right expectations, make sure everybody's on the same page? Cause it was probably too open-ended and I was like, take it and run with it. Cause that's just what I do sometimes. It's like, I'm going to take this and run with it.
And you went up the mountains and mountain bike down and then got on a parachute. And you went everywhere with it.
Yeah. Yep.
That's impressive though. Like someone gives me that, I'll be like, I'll find you a job. I don't know. This one, whatever one, I'll find you a job.
Right. Yeah. Like that. Oh my goodness. Yeah. The amount of work. I guess good to see that sort of thing in a candidate, but you should not be requiring that of candidates. They've got other stuff. It's just, you gotta be empathetic to the person doing it too. Like I would love to see that as like a hiring manager, but just knowing the amount of work that somebody could end up putting into something like that. Like it's just,
you can't expect someone to do that.
Yeah.
Just right out the gate. Cause if someone does that, to be honest, I worry about them. First of all, I tell them like, hey, great work, but are you sleeping?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Seriously.
Burnout is a real problem, as we have talked about. Yeah. So I hope that, I can get someone who can also sound the alarm. I love that phrase. Just sound the alarm when something doesn't work for you, something doesn't work for me, whatever it is. Just when you see a problem, that problem could be you approaching burnout, which we don't want that problem. So yeah, that's so funny. I can totally see you just like 5 a.m, just typing away. Just the room is dark with your 5 guitars on the wall, just typing away. It was
definitely something like that. I remember staying up extremely, extremely late.
Oh my goodness.
In order to get that done. Or to get it to the point, not to get it done, but to get it to the point that I wanted to, because I had like a very specific vision of, by the time it got down to it, of like what I was going to do and say and all of that sort of stuff. So anyway, it needed more boundaries. I needed some boundaries on that one.
But yeah, this is a great story to illustrate the point. Like if you're anybody wants to give them an exercise, give them a boundary, just some perimeter to make sure they don't turn into, I guess, what Kyle did for that exercise.
For sure. And I think like hitting on some of those points. I mean, I really like, allowing some presentation, allowing some writing, like that sort of stuff in interviews, just to get a feel for who, especially on the product side, like how will they present? How will they, speak to something? How will their writing be, that sort of stuff? But it's got to be, it's got to have a framework around it. You got to put some boundaries around it so that they're not overwhelmed by what you're doing.
And to be honest, like at the end of the day, if you're interviewing people and while doing your job too, like likely the hiring manager only have so much time to read through. Let's say if this is sent out to 3 candidates and one of them send you a 500-page presentation, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is.
Yeah. But again, not trying to discourage anyone to go above and beyond. What I'm trying to say is just sound the alarm if someone is asking you that, and don't expect someone to do it. That really is it.
Yep.
Yeah. And we've been kind of talking a lot about the exercise in the interview process. I have another piece I want to ask your thoughts on is some companies, they do culture fit interview and have someone who comes from an entirely, irrelevant department to come gauge how well you will fit into the company. Or sometimes different approach would be, hey, the VP is going to come interview you for maybe an individual contributor level role, or just higher powers, depending on size of the company. How do you see those team members from other departments or teams coming in?
I think that it can be a really good kind of outside perspective. So especially as you get, your team involved and like immediate workers, like getting somebody who can really help, see the candidate in just a different light. I'd probably be careful around like the cultural fit, because I think that can be like both good and bad in that, are you only trying to hire people like you and like people that are already there? Because that can be a very dangerous road to go down. But Amazon does something. I keep going to Amazon, but they do a bar raiser interview where you kind of have somebody from outside of the hiring group come in, and it's not necessarily about cultural fit, but more about, is this person going to raise the bar for everybody? Like, are they really, really good? And they're not, the more we hire, like the better people we get and that sort of stuff. So just getting an outside perspective. I've been kind of the outside perspective in other teams. And I think, hopefully it's helpful in, just getting a different view, making sure that you're doing it in the right way so that it's not to filter out candidates that aren't like people who are there. There was a funny Dilbert I saw, I think just today, where it was like talking about how Dilbert was interviewing for cultural fit, and the candidate asked, is there anything, or is the culture so good that it can't be improved on? And Dilbert was like, it sounds like you might be too smart to work here. And the candidate was like, yeah, I get that feeling too. So like making sure it's, I don't know, like almost a bar raising, but also getting some outside perspective, I think is great, because you can get into groupthink if, you're all, you have a team and you all know each other and that sort of stuff. And, there might not be anybody willing to speak up if they have concerns, but if you have an outside perspective of, here's somebody who's not part of the team, they're not necessarily accountable to the hiring manager, but they can just give input on, here's really good things. Here's maybe some areas of concern or that sort of stuff. And just, give an additional perspective, but knowing that your culture can always be improved on. So don't filter out people who aren't the perfect fit right now, if, especially because they could add significantly to hopefully the culture going forward.
It's almost exactly what I was going to say, because once upon a time, somebody has made a comment about, that interviewing process, that particular portion shouldn't be cultural fit, but more like an ad. So we should look for, a culture ad, not culture fit into the company. Exactly what you said. And I that actually blew my mind a little bit, because I was like, you're absolutely right. Yeah. How do you define who's in, who's out? When you decide if you're a fit or not, right? That basically is a pass-fail test. And how do you define that, right? Because I might define it in a different way that you do. I think that can get dangerous, or sometimes, like you said, adding the same personality usually is kind of becoming the top, what is that factor that people look for, which is really not how you should evaluate your candidate, and also who you bring into the interview process to evaluate that will alter the results drastically, which it shouldn't, right? And a lot of the time, I also think that the interviewers are not prepped in a way that have, hey, we're all going in with the same criteria or same approach. Everyone's looking for different things, and that kind of is counterproductive. And I have been in that process, and I came out, I was like, hold on a minute, we're not talking about the same thing. Yep. And also, I've also been in ones that the evaluation is through an exercise that, sometimes is completely irrelevant to your company's industry or whatever, just kind of test how the candidate will respond to this very out of the left field question. And some people just don't do well in that kind of like rapid fire, give me an answer right now to this very random scenario that we just posed to you that has nothing to do with what you're expecting to hear. And that's also where, okay, does this framework actually provide any insight to how well this person can add to the company?
Yep.
It probably doesn't. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that I don't know anybody has figured out, oh, that's the way to do it. And because I feel like technical skills, all the other stuff, you have, they're just more channels to figure that out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what we've done in a couple different places, and what I've seen as well, is really refining the process, especially as you go, and then understanding what each group or interview is really meant to get to. And so we set up something like that in a previous role that I had, where it was, everybody had kind of the specific things that they were talking about or kind of interviewing for. And then we could bring all of that back together. So there was prep involved. And then it was also, what are we trying to understand in each of these different interviews? So it's not just kind of like go in and, have the exact same conversation or have a different conversation, that sort of stuff, but like very thought out, like here's the things that we want to dig into. Kyle's going to it's going to interview specifically kind of around this specific thing. And the next person's going to really focus on answering another thing. And so it's not like the interviews just aren't, go in, tell me about yourself, tell me about your experience, kind of the same over and over. Cause that's just, honestly, it's a waste of everybody's time if you're like repeating as interviewers, repeating the same thing that really could be captured better in, maybe like a group setting, and then diving into some of the specifics in individual interviews, which is one way to do it. But just having a game plan, I think, is the key takeaway there.
Oh, like, yeah.
Just what are you going to do, and go into it with an actual plan, as opposed to like, hey, you four, you're doing interviews and go with it like that.
See you there.
Here's your time slots. We'll get back together after. That is not a great game plan.
I think this problem, if I can guess, I think it's more common than we think, because I really, it's just one that can be easily overlooked. And I personally, in the past, I have gone in to meetings with HR and just like, hey, can we talk about the interview process? Because I don't feel like it was productive, where everyone just kind of went in with no prep, or, coming out with things like, that candidate is very charming, I like him. And I'm like, wait, hold on. That's what we're looking for. Cause that's on my page. Never. and, and that came out during the interview. Right. And then I was like, wait a minute, we can't do this. So if you see anything like that at your, current workplace, like, HR is probably the good direction to have that conversation and ask, hey, what is the preparation or proper process to get everyone on the same page? Or if you feel comfortable in a smaller workplace, you can get the group together and say, hey, how do we want to approach this before we go in and just kind of gun blazing at the one person.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Especially as a hiring manager, I think a lot of it comes down to like a hiring manager too, especially, I mean, if you have a really formalized process at a big company, you probably don't have as much leeway, but like as a hiring manager, just understanding what it is that you're looking for, who is going to be part of it, and prepping as much as the candidate preps, because hopefully as a candidate, like I expect as a candidate, you're doing a fair amount of preparation. If you're a somewhat decent candidate, you will like go through a lot of, studying and prepping and that sort of stuff. So the least that managers and the team can do is prep as well and make sure that it's as good and insightful an experience as it can be. Because, I think we've all been in interviews where it's just like either one after the other and there's not really like a coherent flow to it. It's just these 4 people are going to interview you, and that's what it's going to be. You can tell the difference between that and, here's the interviews and here's the interviewers, and, they're focused around answering some specific questions. Like, it might be one is around teamwork and just talking about how you work in a team and examples and that sort of stuff. And another might be a more technical one, but just having some sort of idea what you're going to try and accomplish.
I would like to extend this point to also sharing a little bit with your candidate to tell them kind of, hey, these are the 4 people that are going to be in the meeting. And also this is the direction that we're going to go into, just a little bit to kind of help the candidate to prepare to after you figure out the game plan, with your peer group that you're bringing into interview. Because I mean, there has been so many times where I personally have gone into an interview to be interviewed as the interviewee that I was like, they didn't tell me anything. I guess it would be just anything. And, there are questions that can catch you off guard. And I am not my best when I'm, caught off guard, and it's not productive for, anybody in that situation. So I would recommend sharing a little bit. You don't have to tell them everything, but just give them, hey, the engineering director is going to come in, and, tell them a little bit more.
Yeah, totally agree. Like you want, honestly, you want candidates to be comfortable, but also just prepared with whatever it is. And so if you can kind of give some framework around it as a hiring manager, hiring team, like you can get better answers and just a better quality interview than if it's, we're all going to come in cold and see how this thing goes. Because I mean, that sometimes can go well and sometimes cannot. And honestly, that's why I like some of the take home things personally, because they give like a framework for some of the things that we'll talk about. Like, hey, you're going to answer this question and then you can come in and we'll talk about it. Like we'll go through your thought process, and then we can get into, some of the more interviewing specifics, but like, kind of what you'll be talking about. Like there's something there, and, having some of that prep, like being able to focus as a candidate, being able to focus your preparation on what's going to be the most valuable thing, as opposed to like just having to guess here, could be any of 100 different things that we're going to talk about. And so I now have to be ready for all of them, which as a candidate, I don't know, you probably will be ready for most things, but I feel like every interview I've ever done, I've walked away with like one thing that surprised me. I was like, never had that asked before. And so that's where I make like a growing list of things that like have surprised me, or questions that I, wasn't expecting, or that sort of thing. So I can think about them beforehand. Because if you have the chance to think about it beforehand, you can give a much more insightful answer than if, it's just, you're caught off guard, which I don't like to be caught off guard personally. Like as a candidate, I like to have good answers and, have a chance to think through things. So you don't have to like give the interview question list to somebody. Like, here's everything we're going to talk about. Prep your best answers, but just giving an idea of what it's going to be like.
Exactly. Like you don't need to give me the exact like mathematic questions that you asked me in the exam, but like tell me it is going to be about mathematics or biology, chemistry, whatever it is. So I can get some preparation done.
Yeah.
But flipping that on the other side too, and if you are, going into an interview soon and they're not telling you what it's about, reach out and say, hey, I'd like to be better prepared. Can you share with me who's going to be in the room and what direction, we're going into so I can better prepare? I think that's a very fair question to ask. And this is literally the kind of things that a hiring manager or the recruiter literally just spend 5 minutes to answer. And it doesn't add to anyone's play. It's the bare minimum that they can do.
Yep.
And should do when you ask.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And it's, I agree completely with that. And it's one of those things that, I don't know, maybe I was just like too timid early on, because I can remember like not asking those types of things. But as you get older in your career, like you have no problem with it. Like, hey, what do I need to be prepared with here? Like who is going to be there? Like, are we going to be talking about anything specific that you want me to be ready for, or you want me to prep for, and that sort of thing? Like, just don't be afraid to ask that question, because it's not like, somebody's giving away some great secret on things. Like it's really meant to be a two-way street of, you are trying to show as a candidate that you are really good, but also the company should be doing the same thing. Like show that what's the most valuable, here's what we're going to talk about, here's how we're organized and that sort of stuff. So just so it's a way for both of you to understand better, because if everybody's keeping lots of secrets, then it's just hard to get a good feel for, is this the right person in the right role? And is it the right company for you as a candidate and that sort of stuff?
Right. And they might end up saying like, oh, don't worry, it's going to be casual. And then you go and it's the VP who is interviewing you. Like that's not a good sign, right? It's just like, wait, are you not prepared? Because I, as the candidate, I am prepared, right? It just, again, I think, like you said, two-way street. It has to be, it has to work for both sides. Yep. And if when in doubt, go ask your peers, ask other people that, are in the same industry, or post it on, online spaces. And I think you'll find more willing, commenters than you need. And sometimes they might lead you down the wrong path, but you learn from that too. Yep. Anyways.
Yep. Totally agree. So let me ask you a question, because I know you've been doing some interviews and we have been talking about, honestly, a lot about the hiring manager and interviewer role. But as you've gone through, what have you been finding or seeing from like an interviewee side that would be helpful?
Like me as the interviewee? You
as the interviewer.
Oh, okay.
That would help interviewees. So as you've been interviewing for roles and positions, like what have you been seeing as far as tips and tricks and things that interviewees can improve upon?
Oh, the one thing that I've been seeing top of mind, this is like my immediate giant question mark of, I don't know if it's happening more than usual compared to normal times, is that when we post it for a mid-level position, I saw a lot of very, very, very green candidates apply. And I try to be specific enough in the description where I tell you what I'm looking for, what the working relationship with me as the hiring manager would be like, and also you with the rest of the team, and kind of the level of just skills needed for that, and how autonomous you will be, kind of, the situation in the job description. I try to do a good job describing that. And I just saw a lot of, just not the right skill level applying. And then after that, we had some change in our hiring strategy, and we kind of changed that position to be a senior level. And then at that point, we started seeing a lot of mid-level skills coming in. And it's not to say that nobody should try or move up, because I do see some candidates, yes, you have potential to get up there, but I'm talking about kind of the quantity of how many candidates are a little more far away from where I kind of see the spectrum that would fit into the demand would be. So that was very interesting. And from my perspective too, when I see a candidate who's full of potential, want to, move forward with their career, I want to give them a personal response, not just a canned one that says, sorry, thanks for applying. I have done, probably more than what normally some other people would do to just give you a little more and why or what direction you should be looking. And that is the first thing that kind of came up to my mind, but I just kind of speculate because nowadays it is very accessible to join a course, join a boot camp. So there's definitely a giant influx of younger designers, or people switching careers that end up in the UX space or product design space. But I would say it's discouraging. I would imagine, you as a candidate sending out, just blasting your resumes out there and getting a lot of rejection letters. I would say if you start to see a lot of rejection letters coming through, I would kind of rethink your, applying your application strategy because something's not working, right? So that's kind of my immediate thought on that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And shoot your shot, but just
exactly.
you got to understand like maybe where to shoot it. I liked one thing that you said though, specifically about like the hiring manager being proactive in some of the responses. Cause a lot of times you get either like the automated response just, to pass, or you hear nothing, which is even worse as a candidate.
Yeah.
But like as a hiring manager, taking time where you can to be like, here's where you are, here's what we're looking for. Like, here's maybe some things I would suggest. That's just super valuable. And not many people do it. Over my career, I can remember I can specifically remember the ones who have, like, as I've applied for roles and that sort of thing, because they stand out. And it would be great if just more of us would do that. Like giving feedback on here's where you are, here's what we're looking for. Here's how you could, we're not going to interview at this time, or we're going to stop interviewing, but here's some feedback and that sort of thing. That's super valuable as a candidate to get some of that feedback. And it may be harder early on in the process, like if you're just doing resumes, but definitely I've done it where I've asked, like, after, not getting specific roles over the years, like, hey, what was it? Like, I want some feedback, and have gotten some feedback. Like there have been some people who are surprisingly willing to, sit down and chat about it, which is just amazing to get some of that feedback. Like, okay, I get it. And, this is going to be helpful for the future. So if you can, as a candidate, get some of that feedback, why you're getting rejected. And then as a hiring manager, if you can get, have the chance to give some of that feedback, you could definitely change the course of some people's careers as they're able to focus on what the right role is or what they can do to like upskill in order to get the types of roles that they want.
And to be honest, like even let's say right now it doesn't work, I would like to know, okay, there are a few people I think they are going to get there. And I would like to be able to, hey, now we have another opening for a junior level. Like, would you like to, consider working with me? And I think having that network is very important. And I also want to bring up that so during my last round, I basically had 60 to 70 candidates that I had to respond to. And I didn't respond to every single one with a personalized response, right? I think I had basically, let's say 10-ish that I did write a personalized email to express my thoughts, right? But the rest of them, I try to kind of group them. So let's say if there are like 30 of them that kind of fit into one bucket of why they're not fitting to this position, it is a canned response to a point because I'm still giving them a reason, which applies to them, right? And I think I had 2 groups that share, just within the group, they share the same reason. But you see what I'm saying? Like do anything you can, but I don't think it takes that much time to kind of group them if you can't do personalized response.
Yeah, no, that's super good. And surprisingly, like I think very few hiring managers do that level. So good for you on doing it. Like that's
maybe because I'm still early in my management career. So ask me this question 10 years later. I hope that I can maintain the same answer, but don't get me wrong. It took me some lunchtime just not eating fast enough to get that done. But I really appreciate, especially when some candidates email back, they're like, one of them actually literally told me like, I'm surprised to get this personalized response this early in the process.
Yep.
And I was like, yep. Okay.
Yeah, no, it is surprising, but super good. Yeah. Like if we were all just a little bit more empathetic in that way, where it's not just the standard where thank you for your application. At this time, it doesn't fit with our needs, yada, yada, yada. And best of luck in the future. What?
Yeah. Why even keep it that generic? Right. It's just like,
that's like super not helpful. So as a hiring manager, if you can be helpful, that, I don't know, I feel like that changes the careers of everybody involved in some way. And if we were all doing that, just imagine how much better the world would be of like, hey,
I love that.
We're all people and we're connecting with other people. And even if it's not going to work, which the majority of the time it's not on both sides, but we're still treating everybody as an individual, or as much as possible. Like, hey, understand that, you can't do this right now, but here's, some thoughts or some advice or that sort of thing. That's like changes the world right there.
Oh, that's beautiful. And especially in our industry, at the end of the day, we do product for people.
Yep.
And, I think at the end of the day, that matters the most. And it sounds so idealistic, but I really think it's the small time that you can use to make that happen. Yeah. It touched me, that response when that person was like, I'm surprised to get this. And I was like, I'm glad. I'm glad. Yep. So yeah, that was the one thing I did right, I guess. But yeah, what about you? Have you spotted any patterns or anything?
That's a really good question.
Oh, no. While you were thinking, I do have, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have one last thing I want to bring up that I saw. So I saw basically, all their portfolios, 60 of them. And I would say, if you have a portfolio with visuals and all your, documented process, make sure the one project that you think must be seen should be the top one. Mm-hmm. Organize your portfolio to just imagine what happens if somebody has to go through 60 portfolios, because likely that is the case. So make sure you push that one project to the top. And I would say keep it a little more concise, because nowadays, because I can see the almost a framework of how bootcamp they teach you how to do portfolio. And I can see the same framework applies to so many of the portfolios, same process, same type of survey approach, and the highlighting insights, which is fine. But again, I want to see what you have done uniquely that you offer in that process. And again, make sure your best project is the top project that you show. Anyway.
That's super good advice, because we have such limited time, especially when you're reviewing so many resumes and portfolios and that sort of thing. And two, we have like a limited capacity to remember things. And so, and this is just everybody in general. And so making sure that the main points that you want to stick are at the right spot, because stuff in the middle is going to get lost. And that goes for like a portfolio, probably goes for a resume. And then definitely goes for like the interview too. So making sure that like as a candidate, as you're talking, that you really highlight some key things and drive like some key points home. This is like the advice that I was giving to somebody recently. Like, you have a couple things that you want to ensure that you get out there and like drive home through different stories and through the interview questions and that sort of thing. And then make sure that you are like opening with it as much as possible and like ending with that. So you're driving like those key points home. And you don't want like a dozen key points. You want like, here's the three main things that I do, and just rock at. And I'm going to make sure that you as an interviewer know it. So when you're thinking back on all the interviews, there's like, here's the 2 main things I remember from this person. That's really good. That will help you stand out a lot more. So having like that portfolio, the main portfolio piece at the top, the key thing on the resume, and then, those couple of key things in an interview and driving it home.
Exactly. And I interrupted your thoughts. So I want to hear from your perspective, what have you seen that you're like, do this or don't do that? Or, ooh, why is that happening? While interviewing?
One thing, one big thing I think is, and this, maybe is like the level of enthusiasm that different folks have. It's contagious in an interview. And so if you're like really enthusiastic and you're not necessarily like happy and, you're laughing and smiling or whatever, but you have things that you're passionate about and you want to talk and are excited. Look, we get it. If all of us could stop working right now, like if we won the lottery and we could stop, all of us would stop working. Like that's, I don't know if maybe some of us wouldn't, but like if you just won $10 million or $100 million, like let's be real. We're not going to be out like working at our day jobs and that sort of stuff. You're going to do something else. So like, I get it. Like I feel the same way that you probably feel as a candidate or an interviewer, in that like, this isn't your life's mission to necessarily work in this job like that. It's probably not any of our life's mission to do that. So you don't have to have like that level, but just not making sure that you have the right level of enthusiasm and talking about it. Like, I get it. This isn't the dream of winning $100 million, but if you're just kind of so about things, that can be, I don't know, it doesn't help the interview. And it kind of goes back and forth too, where everybody, I don't know, just kind of takes the level down. So adding the right level of enthusiasm or passion, both as an interviewer and an interviewee. Because if you're just really not excited to be there as a candidate, then that will definitely show. If you're not excited to be there as an interviewer, that will also show and will affect the interview overall.
Totally. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been in interviews where I'm like, I know I'm just out time slot on your calendar. So it's just painful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it comes back to just remembering like we're all people and we're all susceptible to those types of things. And so as an interviewer, understanding that like somebody's put in a lot of time and prep in order to come and talk to you. So just being cognizant of that and understanding that, this is important. And then as an interviewee, same thing, hopefully the interviewer has put in prep and hopefully you are at least somewhat excited about the opportunity to work there. Like, you don't have to, you don't have to have like a bubbly personality, but just making sure you got the right level of energy.
Adjust.
Yeah.
Yep. I like that. And I would say also, I try to block out time before my, interview, because meetings, they run over, whatever. And the candidate just either sitting in a parking lot or sitting at home, just sweating. Like, do I still have the interview or not? Block out time before. So I kind of try to use that time to refresh my memories on their resume, on their portfolio, so that we have some talking points, Oh yeah, that's the one project I really want to ask her about, or just sometimes I try to also come with questions that kind of humanize the process a little bit too. I think that always is a great end, to the hour. It's like, hey, you have done a lot of projects on rock climbing. Tell me, is that your hobby or whatever it is? Or you're from, I don't know, Switzerland. Tell me more about that. Or, I like ending on that after, of course, giving them time to ask questions too. Yep. But yeah. Wow, this has been a long episode. I just checked the time.
It has been. This has been a good conversation. Anything else that comes to mind for you as in the interview process, either as an interviewer or interviewee, that we should toss in here?
No, I think except for just find a place you're happy with. That's it.
Yeah, definitely definitely find a place you're happy with, because you have to be there for a while. And so, well, you don't have
Hopefully.
to be, you don't have to be, but you want to be, right? So make the right decision. And
Yeah.
I was thinking too about just the prep work beforehand. Like, this is something that's kind of been on my mind, is, a lot of us are changing roles frequently, and I think that's accelerating more and more. So just having almost a constant preparation of different things that you're seeing, so that either when opportunities arise, you're ready to kind of jump on them, or
Strike.
yeah, or as you're kind of looking for a change. It's difficult. I've found it very difficult, and probably others have too, if you kind of decide to make a move, you're going to start interviewing or whatever it is, and you start cold from there, and kind of either having like a running list of questions or things that you're constantly thinking about, or, gaining new skills, whether that's to improve just things that might come up in the next job that you're interested in. It could be as product and design people, maybe things along those lines, or learning, better writing, or learning, a programming language or anything like that, so that you're ready for it. Because those are the types of things, like if you decide right now, hey, I'm going to start interviewing, the timeline that has shrunk significantly. Whereas if you're kind of working at those things all along, then you have you'll have a much easier time, adding that into like your skill set or the interview process or things like that. So yeah, just be thinking of that. Like, what's the next role, even if you're not interested? And what are some things that you might want to prep for that for 6 months or 8 months or a year down the road? If you begin now, the process will be a lot easier than if you make the decision and then decide, man, I got to learn a new programming language, or I've got to brush up on my math skills or whatever it is.
Yep. Math skills always useful.
Always. Yeah. Love some good math skills.
I found Excel spreadsheeting. I feel like that's not a word, but should be. Google sheeting. I'm sorry. We might have to kind of spread out. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Spreadsheets are great. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I'm glad I could leave this nugget in my last episode, but yeah, that's a lot of good gold nuggets that we have put into this episode. And I definitely want to do a shout out or Grimes if you have any.
Yes.
Can't leave without that.
No.
So
we have to.
Do you want to start? Do you want to go?
Sure. I'll start, and I'll start with a gripe, and we're going to talk more about this. And I think I mentioned it in a different podcast about Disney and the planning process. So not here on Product by Design, though it might be a good one for that, but a different one. I'll leave a link in the show notes. But the Disney experience is magic, and they do so many things right, but they also really drop the ball in some places, especially when it comes to like their use of technology and some of the UX behind the whole process. So like the fact that you have to do so much planning in order to execute a Disney vacation, I feel like is not necessarily a failure, but a big drawback in the overall UX. And I'll give one example. We've got a whole bunch, but this one came up in one of the groups that we are in as far as like Disney planning. When you buy tickets, you can buy the ticket and set the date, but you also have to make a reservation for a specific park. So what? Disney World has a number of parks: the Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, Epcot, Animal Kingdom. So they have all of these different parks. You have to make a reservation to the park. Otherwise, yeah. And there was somebody else who didn't know that, bought tickets to Disney World and, got their trip planned, but didn't make the park reservation. And park reservations fill up, so you might not get into the parks. That for me is a failure of UX right there, where you should, as part of the purchasing process, be also setting the reservation for the park. So
that's just a selection step.
Yeah. And you're able to change it. So like after the fact, if there's still open slots, you can change the reservation, or you can change the ticket dates, like that sort of thing, which is why they don't make you set it up front. But then you get into the situation of somebody buys tickets, they set the dates, but they don't make the park reservation. And then their trip approaches and there are no reservations left.
Wait, so what do you do then?
Good question. Don't know.
You just don't get to do anything?
You would probably just have to move your ticket dates. So like you've bought the tickets and yeah, exactly. So anyway,
taking work off, planning my flight, like that's not happening.
Getting the kids pumped up or whatever it is. Anyway, there are a number of these and that's my gripe. And we'll be diving into some more of that, but just leaving that little nugget out there that Disney Magic is awesome. And some of the experiences that they have, I don't think anybody else does it the way they do, but they need to up their game in some of the places with some of the technology that they're using and the UX and the reservation process and stuff like that. It could be a lot better. Anyway, that is my short gripe. Longer gripe to come on Disney World.
My goodness, I cannot believe that you have to do that. And I would like to be able to experience that one day. But you're right. That whole preparation thing that you told me at the beginning of the episode, that is enough for me to be like, I'll just go to New Mexico, non-Disney state.
Yep.
Somewhere that I don't need to plan 500 days in advance.
Yep.
Good to know. I'll be texting you if we decide to go.
Yes. Definitely.
I know there's a network of what is that? The Disney network that has a bunch of people that are very invested in that.
There are, planning. Yeah. And that's, you have to lean on that significantly in the process to get all of the planning done and make sure you're not, and then contribute. So like once you've figured stuff out, which you shouldn't have to do that like while you're on vacation, but like we were doing that, figuring out live and then contributing back into the group of like, hey, here's how it works so that people know.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Crowdsourcing knowledge.
Yep.
All right. You ready for my gripe?
Yeah.
Mine's so small, so small, but it occurs daily. LinkedIn posts.
Yes. You almost have to say no more. You don't even need to say more because yes, but do say more.
There is a specific genre of posts that I just cannot. Actually, you've seen almost like patterns of either people starting new jobs. That's great. Mm-hmm. I've done that. You've done that. And it's like, yes, congrats. Yep. But there are posts that are just clickbaity. Hate those. It's so like, clickbaity. Which UI is better? You have seen those. Yeah,
seen those.
Better for who? Yep. Better according to what metrics? And that is exactly the point, right? Is that they're not trying to ask any questions, but it's like so many comments, so much engagement because of that.
Yep.
Really, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't feed into that that culture. But every time I see it, it's just like, this is the kind of stuff that just means nothing. And it has a similar, okay, this is where maybe I get canceled on the last episode. So it kind of has the same energy as the, I don't know, these TikTok accounts or Instagram accounts that are like some quick UX, expert telling you this one thing you're going to learn in the next 10 seconds, in this one post about how to design buttons or whatever it is. There's just so many of those accounts. I'm like, how do you apply any of these things? Like, what is the context? What is your user group? What is this product? And it's always assumed to be like customer facing product. And in this very specific lane of application, I'm like, why is this so popular?
Yep.
Anyways.
Totally agree. So, yeah. It's all about the clicks and the likes and the engagement. And
I hate
those ones. I hate most LinkedIn posts, especially the clickbaity ones. Just, they kill me. And they run rampant. All of the, I cried at work today. Enter. And you're like, damn it, man. What? You're just trying to get somebody to open up and click on, the next thing.
You want the engagement.
Yeah. And it just, those ones drive me crazy because it's doing it perfectly because it's like, well, now I got to click in and see what this guy was crying about at work. And then it's like, something totally stupid. And you're like, but it's getting the engagement.
I want to clarify. There's a line. And when we talked with Rachel, her post sharing her real human experience, that is not one of those clickbaity ones. So just to put it out there.
Yeah, that's so good. But so there are just far too many clickbaity ones where it's like, you know, they lure you in with something and then it's like pull the rug out as soon as you're no, that's
yes.
What are you trying to do here? I could pull up LinkedIn and even see some. They're just
oh yeah. Which UI is better? It's definitely top in my network. And then the second one is, do you think internship should be paid? That one, ridiculous. Similar energy. I don't feel like that's a real survey, but you see people that still vote. No, internships are just experience. No.
Yep.
They have to pay rent. That's it.
Yep.
End of discussion. Anyways, my gripe is small, but very relatable, I hope.
Super relatable and super good.
Thank you.
No, I just
Are you checking
pulled up.
LinkedIn
Yeah,
right
I'm
now?
looking at LinkedIn, and that was like the top one was
Me
one
too.
of those things on mine too. Here's one. And it starts with, I lost one of my best employees.
Oh, I have the same one.
Yeah. You're seeing it? Yeah, this kills me. These ones kill me.
It's the exact same one.
Ah.
The person's first name starts with a G.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Exact same one.
Yep. He's just driving me crazy. Cause then it's like spaces too. So that it's always like the clickbaity line.
Read more.
And then you got to read more. And it's like, those ones kill me.
Yes.
It's just, yeah. I want to make fun of them endlessly. Cause it's, you got to get people clicking in. It's lame. If you're going to share like real meaningful experience, just share it, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Describe it. It's the longest gripe that I've done, but maybe not. I do like that we end on this one because probably a timeless gripe, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's never going away. LinkedIn will always be LinkedIn, I guess.
It wasn't like that before.
No, it wasn't. But then you got the rise of like the LinkedIn influencer. And so they got to constantly be posting like
abomination.
Yeah. This sort of stuff.
I'm sorry. This is like strong opinions left and right.
It is. There it is. Podcast. That's the problem. The problem isn't sharing good, useful things. The problem is LinkedIn influencers. Like we got to the heart of it.
All right. I just submitted my feedback that I no longer want to see posts like this. Okay. Anyways, I have to go to a haircut appointment and this is probably, I mean, the best episode.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
All right. We'll look forward to the next one. It will probably be a little bit in the future, but more to come, hopefully.
After Kyle is done mourning my departure.
Yes.
But I'll be back. Hopefully. Yep. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But thank you so much for listening.
All right. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks again for listening. If you like the show, be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on Twitter at ProdByDesign. That's prod_by_design. You can follow me at Kyle Larry Evans on Twitter as well. If you want more product conversation, check out my newsletter, Product Thinking, at productthinking.cc. You can follow me on Medium at Kyle Larry Evans as well, or check out my Medium publication, Product by Design. Thanks again.